SIPA students know that very few events at SIPA start on time, but probably the business school students know that many of the events at the business school do start on time. So today we're being deferential to our colleagues at the business school and getting started promptly. A word or two about CYBER. It's the international program for business education at the business school. I happen to know it's one of the most successful ones in the country. It's what's called a Title VI recipient, and a recent review of the Title VI programs, especially those in the business school, identified the Columbia program as one of the most innovative and successful in the country. So SIPA is really pleased to be co-sponsoring this event with the CYBER program in the business school. But I want to hasten to get the speaker here before the microphone. We're really extremely pleased to have Kai-Fu Lee here. Many of you know that he is a Columbia alum. He got his BS in computer sciences here years ago, we'll put it that way, but not that many, but at least several years ago, back in the mid-'80s, '83. He got his PhD from Carnegie Mellon. He taught briefly at Carnegie Mellon, and then unfortunately higher education lost him to the high-tech world, and he's had a quite successful and really remarkable career and set of accomplishments across a number of very familiar companies. He spent many years at Apple, worked on speech recognition, which was his PhD dissertation, also published on speech recognition. Then spent some years at Microsoft, initially actually in China, 98 to 2000. He was leading the Microsoft program in China, then came back to headquarters, where he spent the next 5 years in the Microsoft world, only to be stolen finally by Google, which of course steals everything now from Microsoft, personnel, ideas, market share, and so forth, and came back to Google in part to establish Google in China, which he is, of course, the founding president. I'll just let him start off. We'll hopefully have a bit of time for Q&A at the end, but it's a pleasure, sir, to welcome you to back to Columbia.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. We definitely don't steal ideas from Microsoft. We come up with those ourselves. So today I'm going to talk about our China experience. I was at Columbia a couple of months ago giving a talk on leadership, and a few people told me that was very useful, but can I come back and talk about Google? So today I'm giving an alumni event this evening, so I suggested this might be a good opportunity. So China, why does Google care about China? Why does any internet company care about China? I think this graph gives you a very clear answer. Earlier this year, China became the world's largest internet country. There are now about 255 million internet users, and very soon it will exceed the U.S. number, and very soon it will exceed the U.S. population, and will, for the foreseeable future, be the world's largest internet population. So that clearly makes it very interesting and potentially lucrative for all internet companies to care deeply about going into China. So how have they actually done? Actually not very well. If you look at some of the top brands of internet companies from outside China, you will find that they often have 2% market share, 1% market share, in some cases 0% market share. And one might wonder why that is, and one might even draw a conclusion that multinationals, when they're internet companies, will fail in China. We at Google certainly don't believe in that. We entered China a little bit late. I joined in 2005, and when we joined, a number of companies were already in the process of having difficulties, and some have already failed. So while entering late means we have to catch up in terms of brand building and market share, it also meant we could learn from the other companies' experience. And what we have learned is that largely the other companies had trouble because, one, they really are too short-term profit-focused. They would build a team, localize the product, want to make money the next quarter. Or they would buy a company and bring that company CEO as the general manager in China and demand that they make money. And this was back when the internet population was only 70, 80 million, and there wasn't much, the advertising model was unproven, and it was just way premature. And it causes the heads of the China subsidiary to make the wrong decisions. They don't spend enough time recruiting a team, building the right products. They just think about how to get the most money out, especially during the period of the dot-com boom, and then, of course, the bust. That was the first reason. The second reason is that they really didn't empower the local team. All these internet companies generally feel, hey, it's successful in the US, move over to Europe, still successful. Many cases move to Japan, even successful. So China is just another country. So let's just take the US product, leave the servers in the US, host a global platform, localize the language, and expect to win. And then they found out with a rude surprise that was not good enough. Because in the internet space, companies move very quickly, and local competitors often know the local users' taste better, move more quickly, have server and data located in country, and they're empowered to make decisions quickly, so these multinationals lost out. So actually, if you look at these two reasons, they're really no different from the auto industry or the food industry or the consumer goods industry. When you want to succeed in a new large market, you have to have a strong team, empower it, let them build their own products, and also have a longer-term focus, because the market's not just large, but also growing rapidly. So that was the conclusion that we drew. And in fact, before I joined the company, I made sure that we would not run into these problems. So these were the words that Eric Schmidt said that made me quite comfortable joining Google, and also made us quite optimistic about the future that we could have. So when asked, other companies have a short-term view and come in and had trouble, does Google have the patience to win in China? And these were his exact words. He said, we'll take a long-term view to win in China. China has 5,000 years of history, and Google has 5,000 years of patience in China. So those of us who are Chinese are very happy to hear that. And certainly our plan reflects a great degree of patience. So what is our winning plan? Well, we went into China with low market share. That was even drifting lower for a variety of reasons. I'll get into a little bit of that later. But what we set out to do was we said, okay, let's go build the right foundation. Let's hire some great people. Let's train them. And let's take the time to learn about Chinese users. Let's be humble. Let's not assume anything that worked in the US and Europe shall work in China. So that's what we did in much of 2006. As our market share drifted from 20s to teens, okay? A lot of other companies would be panicked. They'll be trying to find ways to put the Band-Aids on the problem, but not us. We wanted to really understand how to build products that users will love and hire people who will be here to build a company that will last rather than finding Band-Aids. So that's what we did in 2006, arguably a most difficult year. In fact, after this meeting, I'm heading over to Business Week. And in 2006, they wrote an article predicting our demise. And I'll remind them that we're still here standing. In 2007 and 2008 is sort of the next step. Once we got the people, we learned about users, then we can build great products. Certainly, all of our products revolve around search, and we got to have the best search. Now, I know most of you think, hey, Google's already got the best search. But for Chinese, that was arguably not the case in 2005, 2006. Our search was good in some things and not very good in other things. So we spent a lot of time catering to every detail, building the best Chinese search. Today, I think if you go to Google's Chinese search, I'm quite certain that you'll find its quality to be about as good as our English search, and our gap with the closest competitor to be equal, if not larger. So that goal was accomplished. And then with all the studies of the Chinese users, we wanted to start building new products, non-search products that really solve users' problems. And then we believe once we do that, market share will follow and profitability will be shortly after that. So that's what we're working on right now. And if you ask what we're up to next, I believe the next stage would be around the date 7006. This was Eric's 5,000 years of patience, where we'll do a lot of great things, but For now, we are focused on the 2008 goals. So what have we really learned? I said we learned a lot in 2006. We did user studies, focus groups. We talked to users. Certainly one of the great things about Google is our products are instrumented, so we know where users clicked, and we can measure which ones are, which features they like, which they didn't like, and build upon that. So here are some examples of what we learned in China. One example is because of the restrictions on print media, the internet has become an amazing form of alternative for users to get information. Now, I know many of you still read about censorship in the newspaper, but I will tell you the internet pretty much lets anybody find anything nowadays in China. And it's really amazing how that's opened the eyes of all the users. And many of the young people no longer read newspapers. So that makes it very different and much more dependent upon than, say, in the United States. The new users are huge, whereas in the US, pretty much the market is saturated, whereas in China, about 30%, 40% growth a year still. So any company that has a majority share, let's say even 100% share, but loses all the new users, in 3 years will become no longer the winner. So that's really important. And these new users often learn to use the internet from internet cafes. So this was one of the mistakes we made. When we went into China, we went to the internet cafe, we saw everybody was playing games, listening to music, and we said, this is not our niche. But what we really didn't realize was in smaller cities, this was where the kids, whose parents couldn't at that time afford a computer, went to learn about getting online. And now we've learned our lesson, and we're much more active in internet cafes, not doing games or music, but just making sure when users search, they understand we're a viable and even preferred option. So internet cafe usage is huge. The average age is about half of the American user, and that has a number of implications. People they learn quickly. It also means they love entertainment, they love games, they love communities. These really make the usage patterns quite different. Inputting Chinese is hard. Imagine 5,000 characters, 26 letters of the alphabet. The mapping is difficult. So that creates a certain impediment about, how do you enter a URL? How do you type a search query? These all are potential issues that don't exist in the US. The language in Chinese is actually very, very dense. That is, the same content expressed in Chinese needs only half the area. And that has user interface implications. The English skills of the Chinese users obviously increasing, but still, of course, much, much lower than in the US. So that implies a lot of the content may not be enjoyed by many of the users if their English skills are not good enough. The internet music is an interesting case in point. We found many of the Google users left and went to our competitor Baidu because of the free music that they could get. You might think iPod and iTunes have it all figured out, but in China, you don't see very many iPods, and you certainly don't see anybody using iTunes. Okay, there are special music players, there's internet players, there's downloading, there's streaming, and there's no paying. Okay, so it's all MP3 basically downloaded without protection and without paying. And that's and imagine two search engines that might be somewhat different in quality, but one can get you free music and the other can't. So which one are you going to use? And that certainly creates certain problems for us. Software piracy is very high. These are numbers reported by an independent third-party American company, so they're not my numbers. At Google, we no longer care that much about piracy rate, although my previous employer cared deeply. But these numbers have come down from 99% to 96%. So, but don't laugh. For my former employer, that's 4x the revenue, right? So it's quite substantial. And it's clearly going to go further down. I mean, China, I think, is quite committed to follow its entry to WTO, and it's going to come down. But in the meantime, as piracy rate was high, the software model for distribution has already changed. So if you're an entrepreneur in the US 5 years ago and you wanted to set up a software business, you're probably going to think about how to be the next Adobe or whatever. and come up with that product that might be a CD, might be an internet download, and then you would sell it and charge for upgrades. But even 5 years ago in China, if you're an entrepreneur in college, let's say you want to go into the software business, the chances are you've already gone one step beyond the American distribution. Because of the piracy, there are no channels, there are no software stores, everything's downloaded. So the likelihood is you probably want to build something for free and let people download. And how do you ever make money? By bundling other software products who will pay you for the bundling. So that's become the most common software distribution model, that a very popular software that, say, 5 million downloads, let's say, per week. And then each copy comes with 3 other pieces of software that are not as popular, but that tag on for the ride and gets installed on the user's machine and pays a few cents per copy. And that number definitely adds up. So that's quite an advanced model of distribution that's frictionless, channelless, and I think very interesting. But of course, that also creates problems, because who are the most likely people who will pay along for the ride? These are the spywares and the adwares and the software that clicks on Google ads without the user consent and things like that. So these cause actually quite a bit of problems too. So it's a two-edged sword. Advanced distribution, but also creates a lot of malware and spyware channel. So much so that the Windows reinstall rate in China is every 4 months. So the average user needs to reinstall Windows because all this spyware completely messed up the machine. And they do so in very devious ways, right? They may change your register settings and things like that. So there's almost no way for a mortal to reverse the damage it's done. So you just have to back up your files, reinstall Windows. And that's the advice you get from the experts. So that's really painful. So it's both an opportunity and a challenge for a company like Google to enter this kind of a market. Credit card penetration is about 1% of US. Certainly there's not enough trust to use it online. There's not even enough use in physical brick-and-mortar stores. So that means companies that depend on e-transactions, the Amazon and eBay equivalents, they've got to figure something else out. So certainly a translation of the US model would not work. And then lastly, the mobile phones. There's 600 million phones, incredible market, incredible opportunity. And with the advent of 3G and potentially lower cost connection rate, that will open a whole new way of access. And interestingly, many people who get on the internet through the mobile phone has never used the PC. So the experience will need to be necessarily different from that of the American users, whose mobile phone internet experience is optimized around, synchronized with the PC, because you always have 2 devices. But in China, potentially not the case. And then when you go to India and other countries, probably even more so. So that's another interesting difference. So hopefully by now I've convinced you there are enough differences. If you just localize your product, you will not succeed. So let me now go into a couple of select examples of these and show you what we actually did. The first example I want to talk to you about is new users. So what do new users like? Well, they want entertainment, they want ease of use, and they want something that's dependable and easy. It turns out what they want is something that looks like this. It's called a shallow directory. This looks very much like the early days of Yahoo, and you might think, wow, this can't be. But this is the homepage that most Chinese users prefer. These are categories, news, sports, and email providers, and so on and so forth. And they're all dependably there, so people click on it. Why do people like it? There are a lot of different theories. One theory is that it's always there, it's dependable. Another theory is that you don't have to type anymore. Because some of these websites are really strange. And their names don't match, because you can't type Chinese characters easily. So the URLs tend to be in English. So as an example, a popular Chinese website, Wang Yi. But Wang Yi is kind of long to spell in pinyin English form. And the Chinese characters, nobody types that. So the founders said, well, let's try our English name, NetEase. That's what Wang Yi means. Then, of course, people don't know the English name, and they said, well, let's make something simple. What's simple? let's be 163.com. So nowadays, when you use 163, that's NetEase, that's Wang Yi, and then it's got the Chinese character and the Pinyin character. Actually, a bit confusing for the user. So for people who like to just know, hey, there are 5 portals, I can't remember how they're spelled, I can't remember if they're 123.com or 345.com, I'll just collect the whole list here. And I'll just click on the 5 portals every time I want to go browse. So that's kind of the pattern that began. Certainly, I believe, over time, the Chinese users will move towards more of a search engine-centric point of view, but today they're still there. Similarly, internet cafes, this is just one of the designs we've tried. It's actually not the one we're using today. We've tried to say, well, let's go into internet cafes and get the users to try out Google. So can you set Google as the home page? And just so people can play with it. And then we talked to a bunch of people and said, hey, did you try the new page? He said, yeah. What do you think? And he said, well, I think you didn't finish the design. It's left blank intentionally or what? So people are used to these busier pages. So we just filled out the rest of the page to make it a little more understandable. And another very interesting thing that we found users really responded to is what we call universal search. And I'll go into that in a little more detail. Before I do that, let me first explain what something we tried in China. We talked to a bunch of users and said, okay, who's got the best Chinese search? This is after we know we got the best Chinese search. We brought 10 users in and said, who's got the best Chinese search? Every one of them say Baidu. Why? Because you're a foreign company. You can't possibly understand the complexities of our language. Okay? So that's one issue we have to overcome, a perception. Okay? But then we kind of just, we weren't happy about that, but we got over it and said, okay, let me show you. And then we said, what do you want to search? Each of them came up with a term. We showed them our result and other search engine result. We finished 10 searches, and we said, okay, now who do you think has the best Chinese search engine? All of them say Google does. So we were quite happy about that. Then we said, okay, so will you use Google from now on? 1 or 2 of them said yes, but most of them said no. And we said, why not? We've proved we're the best search engine. And it just said, you PhDs have these, esoteric differences about ranking and quality. To me, they look roughly the same. When I open up search results, I click on a bunch of things. Who cares if it's number 2 or number 4? Plus, they got music, they got this, and you don't. So it's just not worth it for me to switch. Yes, you can take 20 minutes, do 10 searches, and prove to me you're better, but that's not that important. Plus, even if you convince me, what are you going to do? Go to 255 million people and spend 20 minutes each? What you need is a way to show people you're better from 3 feet away with just one search. So this is what one of the users said to us. And we took him up on the challenge. And that's what I'm about to describe. So in addition to having higher quality search, we saw the need to have better search, one example, 3 feet away. So here's what we did. We found an interesting phenomenon on the internet is a lot of these vertical searches are emerging. So while a search engine, generic search engine, web page search engine is very good for in general, there are these restaurant searches, train ticket searches, real estate searches, news searches, scholar searches, book searches that are emerging everywhere. And all of these searches are good at what they specialize in. They're not general, but once you tell them, hey, I'm looking for a scholarly article, and I want to know who wrote the authoritative paper on speech recognition. And then they will find the right answer. The way they do that is very different from web page search, because no longer is it about TF-IDF and PageRank, but it's about what journal was it published in, what other papers reference you, and things like that. So the signals to build a vertical search engine is different from a web search. So you can't take a one-size-fits-all approach. And that's why all these vertical search engines emerged. So Google's answer to that is, we understand that. We want to build a lot of vertical search engines, but we want to show users just one interface. Because at the end of the day, when you build 300 vertical search engines, nobody can remember them. So what we want to do is just have one interface to all these databases in the end, which are merged together. And that's called universal search. So news, scholarly articles, books, images are all examples of that. So here's an example of searching for a movie. So when you go to Google and search for this name of a movie, you will get movie showtimes in the city that you live in. You will get news about the movie. You will get video hosting that has the trailer of this movie. So that search result, at a glance, from 3 feet, is clearly better than other search engines that don't have this multiplicity of search results. So we believe this universal search is very powerful. You might ask, well, how could you possibly rank a news against a video, against a showtime, against a blog, against a book? We actually can. There are methods that we can measure which type of search results at what time is likely to be more of a scholarly query or a book query or a movie query. And of course, the search ranking may not be perfect, just like they are not today. But we can actually estimate that probability. And I won't go into detail here. There are academic papers you can look up. And we also integrate stock results, although many people today don't want to look at that. There's music video results, blog results, books results, scholar results. Also on the right, you see examples of a map result. When this is searching for a Beijing train ticket. So we're showing all the train stations where you can buy the ticket. We also show on top a database query you can fill out to query where can you buy secondhand tickets. So we're providing a lot more information for query refinement. Here we have image results, video results, weather results, sports results, and also we have the event-driven, like recent Olympics. There are Olympic results. So all of these get blended. And around 20% of the time when you do a query, you'll get these kind of blended results. And that 20% of the time, 3 feet away, you can tell our search result is different. And hopefully that will bring more users readily to come on board with us. Earlier I talked about music as an example. Music is another category that we added. So when you search for a song or an artist, potentially a top result that will come up will allow you to stream or download that particular song to your machine. And it's legal because our partner and we paid for it. We do show an advertising from which we revenue share with the provider of the music. And this is how we hope will not only satisfy our users, but also improve the user legal behavior. And certainly to the users, we can tell them, why get illegal music? You can get it legally from Google. You have to watch an ad, but it's worth it. You get the music forever. And also, you get high-quality music. You get lyrics with it. And there's lots of advantages. So hopefully this will work out really well. For those of you who are very eager to try it, I'm sorry to inform you it's limited to China IP only. The music labels have a viable business model in the United States, and they're not eager to cannibalize that at present. Another difference I mentioned earlier is Chinese is more dense. So this is a picture taken at an airport. This is the equivalent information. And you can see that the English version is twice as dense as the Chinese version. Okay? And you might say, so who cares? But actually, when you design the UI and do a layout of a web page, it makes a big difference. Imagine you're making, a news page result for English, and you lay out various spaces. It won't work across languages. So you might say, well, let's just leave the space flexible. If you have more text, more space, you give it more space. That won't quite work. Let me show you why not. Here's an example of our English news results. You can see that a title like, Heath Ledger, Long Journey from Path, okay? That doesn't completely tell you the story. You have to read the abstract. So the English news product is designed with an abstract as a necessary component to tell you what the articles are. Otherwise, you don't know enough to click on it or not. But if you look at the Chinese equivalent, for those who know Chinese, and I'll attempt to translate one of them. The first one, in the first half, this is just the title. This is not an abstract, okay? It says, first half of the year, China's movie box office exceeded 1.6 billion. Olympics will bring that to even higher level. So that one line up there tells you this much. So who needs an abstract when the title is that descriptive, right? So an American designing the interface will never know that unless you're in China looking at this. So that's another example. You got to be in country. And a lot of the differences are quite subtle. Another difference is basically when users look at the result page, you might think, well, it's a search result. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 per page. They must be the same across different countries, but they're not. We did an eye tracking study that looked at when you type a query, result page comes up, you got 10 results. We track where the users look, okay, by eye tracking. These results are actually done by a third party, but we've done similar results. And what we found is on the left is where the American user looks. Pretty much the golden triangle on the upper left. Top few results, then they click, and then they're happy, they're done. On the right is the Chinese user. They're looking everywhere. They're interested in everything, okay? They top, bottom, left, right, and they hover on this page at least 3 times longer than the American user. And they click on 2 to 3 times more results than the American user. So this has huge implications because to design a Chinese interface, you want each search result to open up a new window. You can't override the current window. The user will get all confused going back and forth, right? It's a completely different design. And you might want, and also you want to create a lot of things people can click on. Since they're so curious, you want to give them lots of things that can satisfy their curiosity. Okay, so let's come back and say, why is this behavior so different? There are many theories. One theory, which I think we've now disproved, is that the Chinese search engines are not very good, so people have to hunt and peck. Another theory is that some of our competitors in China sell search results, so people don't trust it. They have to look everywhere. Okay? I don't think both those are the most likely explanations. There's even more philosophical explanations. One paper from Korea recently conjectured that because Asians are holistic thinkers and Americans are analytical thinkers. Holistic thinkers want to get the whole picture and then build a mental model first, whereas Americans want to solve a problem. Okay? Maybe true, maybe not. But something I really believe in is that the Chinese users are very curious. They like to click. And they don't like to type, and they like to click. If you ask users, what are you trying to do with the search? More Americans would say, I'm looking for an answer. I have this question, I'm looking for an answer. When I find it, I am done. More Chinese users would say, I heard about this interesting concept. I want to know more about it. Okay? So in that behavior, naturally, to know more about it, you would click on a lot of things in an effort to learn. And another reason is that the Chinese is hard to type. So people want to do one query and do a lot of clicking. That's more expedient than going back and redo a new search because typing is difficult. So those are kind of the reasons we learn. I told you about the pop-up window that we built. What else have we done? Another thing that we've done is, well, if they don't like to type, let's build lots of things they can click on. Okay? But Google's philosophy is we build things that are relevant. We don't just make provocative things to click on. If you go to Chinese websites, you will see many companies do build provocative things for people to click on. But that's not what we do. We build relevant things. So when you search for a car, we might have clicks that will give you car reviews, car prices. When you have an English query that could also be a Chinese query, we offer maybe you meant the Chinese query. When you have a query about a particular singer in this case, we say, well, these are related things to that singer that you may be interested in. Basically longer queries, right? This person's Shanghai concert, her pictures, her blog, her blog entry, her photos, and her niece. Okay, I don't know who her niece is, but I guess when you're exploring away, these are all things you might click on. And we find the click rate to be really high for the Chinese users. And this is just a little more detail on the related search. And use an English example. If you search for New York, you might get New York Times, New York History, New York Post, New York Pictures. And that just gives you an idea. And you're probably thinking that's not all that useful for English. But for Chinese, where the users are more exploring and curious, it is actually quite useful. We build other things that you can click on. We build other zeitgeist, which is other things, common queries by by category. So the top movie stars, people could search top actors, top universities, top cities, and top queries in general, top queries in Shanghai, top queries in America, top queries in Japan. And that will satisfy a lot of curiosity if you want something to seed your curiosity satisfaction. Shallow directory we showed earlier. News can be browsed by picture, which you can just click away. We even place advertisement on various websites that gives various types of queries they can give and click on. And they're contextual. So on the financial website, we place financial queries. On the sports website, we place sports queries, sort of to help teach people searching behavior, at the same time showing them what's popular. This is a little more detail of another product called Google Suggest. Here I use an English example. So why show the related search after you search? Why not show it before you search? So if you go to Google's Chinese website and do something like this in English or in Chinese, as you type, it will start proposing other things that you might be interested in. Then you can click on the one that you want. Okay? This is available in Google Labs for English, but it's on by default for Google Chinese. And by the way, if you want to ever try Google, all the things I talk about, just go to google.cn. That will have all the features I talked about here. And people love this. A large percentage of users end up clicking rather than finish typing. And also they come back for a second search because maybe they're interested in Seattle PI as well as Seattle Craigslist. Another reason people don't type is typing is difficult. This is an example where the SHI, shishi, can be mapped to 20 different words in Chinese. You know, fact, stone tiger, accident, and are all examples, are reasonably common words. Many of them are common words. So imagine how hard it is to type English input and convert. So when you type SHI, you'll have to choose among these 20 things. So Google thought, why make people do that? Why not build a new input method that will consider context, right? Because if you said, I went to the temple and there's a lot of shishi, that's probably stone lion, okay? But if you'd said, my airplane had, unfortunately, this airplane, shishi, okay, that would actually mean it had an accident. So which it is depends on context. So who has more context than Google? Because we crawl all the Chinese text in the world. And we build language models of conditional probabilities. If you see these words, what words are likely to follow? We also capture common words. So words that are very new. As an example, Wenchuan. Wenchuan is where the Sichuan earthquake happened. A year ago, that's a name nobody knows. But now everybody knows it. So who could know a word has all of a sudden become popular? Well, Google knows because people are searching on it. So your dictionary on your machine is updated every day as we learn new things that people are searching, that to facilitate your typing it more easily. And also you can have your personal dictionary. This example shows a Google person using Google-specific words. You wouldn't use those words, but he would. And these dictionaries will roam from machine to machine. So if you have 10 machines, it'll know all the words that you know without having to type them. So this is by far the most accurate typing to character transcription system that's in the marketplace. And there are 10 million people who are using it actively. And another problem users don't type, which is a bit of a tangent here, but this is a big problem for us. We ask users, have you heard of Google? Yeah. Do you know it's a search engine? Yes. Spell it. Half the people don't know how to spell it. And that's a big problem because Google doesn't follow Chinese spelling. So we tried a bunch of things. We named it, we had a Chinese name, and we tried to make it shorter. We bought a lot of domain names, but didn't really help until we finally bought this domain, g.cn. It's the shortest domain name in the world, and it finally got people to stop complaining they can't spell our name. We talked about English content being very valuable out there. You might think with 250 million Chinese users, who needs English content? But actually, when there's an economic incentive, the review of the latest automobile, of course that's translated. The recent movie by a famous movie star, of course that's translated. News about U.S. election, of course that's translated. But there are many things that don't have enough economic value or enough, people don't know what they're missing. Then those things don't get translated. And it's a real pity, because medical information is a great example of that. A friend of mine recently had some problems with his kidneys, and then he went to a Chinese search engine. Actually, he went to Google, and he found a bunch of Chinese content. And they were not very professional. So I told him, I'm going to search for you on Google English. And I went to WebMD and Mayo Clinic and found really good answers. And we were appalled at how poor the Chinese answers are, because the Chinese answers tend to be sort of peer-to-peer, community-based entering of what I know about kidney diseases, as opposed to professional doctor-written content. And no one's bothered to translate or write these kind of content for the Chinese professional medical information. And I'm sure there are many, many other areas like it. So translation is quite important. And ideally, we want human-assisted translation, but we want to also do this to scale, because the web is always about the long tail. You can't have humans translate everything. So we embarked on a machine translation effort that tries to translate automatically from any of 50 languages or so to any of the other 50 languages or so. And Chinese and English is one of our biggest pairs, because lots of users, lots of data. And that's how we teach the system. We grab a bunch of data that's bilingual, and then we align them sentence by sentence, red to red, blue to blue. Then we take the two sentences and we align them phrase to phrase so we know which is which. The last one's really tough, period to period, but they're all aligned. Okay? And then we train statistics of the next time you see latest. Okay, for example, next time you see latest, these are the things that can get translated to, because we accumulated these frequencies across all the bilingual text. We crawled over 1 trillion words and we collected all together. So we see that latest is translated as the first one, 25%, 40%, and 30%. Because when you think about the latest, actually means several things. It sort of means newest in one sense. It also means the one that comes last, as in another sense, or the one that's most delayed in a third sense. So these are the probabilities. But again, context comes into play. Not looking at anything around latest, these are the probabilities, and you would be guessing very poorly in this case. The latest development here should not be translated as the one that came late. It should be the one that's new. So what do? Well, you train these contextual language models so that when you know development comes after latest, then actually the first one is 97%. Now you've got enough information to make a more intelligent translation. So that's roughly how our translation works. Here's an example of our translation of a news item. Supergirls 5 finally settled after a heated rivalry. Fei Shi shed tears at the stage. And not perfect grammatically, but it's reasonable. Compared to other translation, here's one I found on the internet. Ultra-female Wu Qiang passes through the intense contention, finally thus to fall decides. Xu Fei Lei sprinkles water on the stage. You can easily tell each one of the English words is the direct mapping of a Chinese word. So without context, this translation system tried the translation, and it's completely incomprehensible. So that's why it's really hard. And through National Institute of Standards and Technology methodically measures the quality of translation, and we've consistently come out on the top. Not so much because we have more brilliant scientists. We might have that too. But mostly because we have huge amounts of bilingual data and also monolingual data to build multiple language models from. And now for a little bit of entertainment, I'll show you some example where we could add value. If you ever take a trip to China, you might see some of these very interesting translations. So if you ever get hungry, small food might be the snack that you want. Okay, Patrol may actually want to sign in the book, but not everywhere. This example is from an Indian friend who took this picture. It says, "Why do you Chinese people want to flush us Indians?" But actually, this isn't what it's about. It's for digital reproduction of digital images, but they didn't. But print print is in, and India is also in. So when they translated print, they translate into India. So that's the mistake. Here's an example of disposable products translated into something quite inappropriate. A result of, for the Chinese in the audience, this is a segmentation problem, right? This is a 一次性用品, not the other way around. And then finally, if you are ever in Beijing and you want to buy some dried fruit, don't be offended by this title. I'm not going to read this one. So another ambiguous character problem. All right, so after the Olympics, the translation quality have gone up quite a bit. But during the Olympic period, one of our engineers really had just could not believe that he saw this picture. And let me show you and see who can figure out what happened. So it's, well, for those who don't get it, some restaurant wants to translate the word restaurant. They went to Google Translate, and they typed restaurant. And sadly, our server was down, so... this is real, so if you ever... So next time you're in China, when you see a translation server error, you'll know that there may be food inside. All right, back to the more serious side about piracy and client software. So we talked earlier about this terrible spyware, malware problem. So what's Google going to do about it? So we actually have a lot of very cool client software. You may know about our Google Toolbar. You may use it. We have our IME, which I showed earlier for inputting Chinese characters. Google Earth is a client-side product that requires a download. We've built a product called Google Kingsoft Dictionary. This is with the most popular dictionary product in China. Of course, Chrome is our browser that we came out recently. And we combine these together in what's called Google Pack. So why do we do Google Pack and all of these client products? So for the user, we think they each provide very valuable end-user value. And also, collectively, I think they show an example of how client products should be built. The user can choose to install, not to install. The user can choose to uninstall. There are no default settings that are required. People can change things back and forth. And we think, and it doesn't damage your system, your register setting, or anything else. So we think that's how green client products should be. So we want to set that example. So obviously, Google has some business incentive too, because these products will also help us give the user the opportunity to install Toolbar, which uses Google Search. Right? So this has some business benefit to us, but mostly it's developing useful products in a way that's green for the Chinese users. We talked about credit cards being a tough problem. Other companies have come up with solutions. eBay was a little bit too late because they went trying to push their American model, some of which has merit, like the credit rating, but some of which is difficult, like prepayment by credit cards. It turns out the most popular e-commerce sites in China pay by the following two ways. One is cash on delivery. So you place an order to buy, and then someone on a bicycle brings the books to your doorstep, collect the cash, and give you the book at that time. What about more expensive things? By escrow. That's the way to go. Right? Hold the money until the person says, I got it, then release the money. And then for that kind of thing, you can use postal money order equivalent transfers, bank transfers for the more expensive items, cash on delivery for the cheaper items. So that will do. But we found another niche that's very interesting. We found most people are, because China is huge. China is perhaps one of the very few countries like the US, India, and a few others that have many metropolitan areas. So people think of commerce within their immediate geographic, generally urban area. So people think about, okay, I want to buy something. I'm going to buy it locally, but I'll use the internet to find where I can buy it. I want to go to a restaurant, go to karaoke, go get a foot massage, go rent an apartment, buy real estate, buy secondhand goods, train tickets, etc. So we build products that will facilitate finding of this local information. It's basically a very smart yellow page-like service, but also includes Craigslist-like capabilities, and it's really taking off in the various metropolitan areas inside China. Mobile is one that almost requires no explanation. We need to move all of our products to mobile because the market's so huge. And then in the meantime, we're developing mobile-first products. And of course, in China, there is a very strong mobile player, China Mobile, which has a large percentage of the market share. So we partner with them and power their search. Okay. And this example just shows you Universal also works on phones. So why are we really optimistic about mobile? Something really happened in June 29th, 2007 that gave us this optimism. What event was that? The introduction of the iPhone. And you see that some metric whose numbers I can't show you. I can't show you the detail of what this is measuring, but you can tell iPhone as a device, its internet usage went through the roof. On the day it was introduced and kept on going. We measured that the iPhone internet usage is 50 times more than other smartphones for internet usage. And that is what gives us great hope, not just for China, but worldwide. What that tells us is when you have a product with a great user interface and a full-featured browser and also flat rate or cheap rate, its usage will take off because people have their phone with them all the time. While it may be a little bit slower to enter, the screen may be smaller, it's your personal device. It's with you 15, 20 hours a day, as opposed to a PC, which is much with you a lot less often. And there's a lot more of them. So we are very excited about this opportunity. We love the iPhone. We love the Google services on the iPhone. iPhone is actually quite popular in China, even though it hasn't launched. There are some 2 million iPhones already in China. And it's not even fully localized, but it's quite popular because of these benefits. Of course, we also are developing Android, which is an open source version of a phone operating system that will also feature a full-featured browser and a modern operating system. And we're working with China Mobile again to get that launched in China. So those are all the things we proactively, top-down, focus group learn from the Chinese users. There are many more, and those are the examples I had to tell you. But we can do more. Many of you will know Google has a 20% time. We let our engineers build products that they think are useful. They don't have to come from me or Eric or the management team. So we believe that hiring Chinese engineers and letting them figure out what users want is the best way to do even more innovation that delight the Chinese users. So we've really hired a lot of great people. In China, we have almost 300 engineers. This is our building. It's very googly, just like our buildings in New York and California. And even more importantly, those Chinese in the audience know that the food is the most important, really. Nothing else matters. So these are the kind of food that we offer to our employees. And we have a 5-star chef in China, just like we have in New York and in California. So with all these engineers, what did they actually build? We talked already about the input method. This is something an engineer came up with. We didn't plan this. Another example is an SMS holiday greeting. In China, every time you have a holiday, people send SMS greeting to each other. And it's really important because it represents you. You might want something humorous, you might want something very warm, you might be sending it to all of your friends or to your girlfriend or to your parents. So you got to pick these carefully. So when you're in Google and you're searching for holiday greetings, we will show you a bunch of greetings that you can pick from, categorized by, it's almost like going to a Hallmark store. All the different categories of greetings. You pick the one you want, and then you enter a mobile phone number or numbers, and then it's sent. And it's also available on mobile phone. And Google will pay for the SMS charges for you. So it's very popular because not only does it help you find the right greeting, but also saves you a few cents. Another example of engineer innovation was during the snowstorm earlier this year. Millions of people were stranded in China due to a historical proportion snowstorm. And what the Google engineers decided to build was a weather map. And this is a map that contains all the weather conditions, all the traffic conditions, all the train schedules, airplane, everything, so that a worrying parent can quickly determine if his or her child will likely be home on time or maybe or delayed. Okay? And this really won us a lot of accolades throughout China. I think there's nothing that will establish a brand more than sincere efforts that demonstrate social responsibility and caring about the country in which you operate. And this is how we promote the weather map. Another example is the earthquake that happened in May of this year. I think all of you have saw that event. And we built a number of products also. Our engineers built a product called Lost Loved One Search, because a lot of people, over 100,000 people were in question, and there are probably even more people who are actually okay, but their friends worry about them. And cell phone wasn't working, email wasn't working. People are really worried about their loved ones. So we built a special search engine that will help you find whether your loved one is okay or not. And Google search doesn't do the job here, because a lot of people can have the same name. If you're searching for John Smith, there could be a million John Smiths. But here we focus the search on specific sites that's likely to have an answer. Either a hospital site, morgue site, Red Cross site, community sites, local sites, and bulletin boards with special sections. So we basically humanly selected the sites that would get covered. And we helped find many people find whether their loved ones were okay or not. And later we put it in the database. And then we found that many people didn't know we had this service. So we even went to community sites where people were asking questions if anyone knew if their loved one was okay. And we would automatically generate an answer and email it to them. So this really helped thousands of people, and again showed people that our Google's true colors, and that we have local engineers who care deeply not just about the company and cool technologies, but about the country in which we operate. We also built a resource map that shows you what areas needs water, antibiotics, and so on. And for people who want to donate, they knew where to go with their SUVs and Jeeps. So these, the snowstorm and earthquake products, probably more than anything, demonstrated to the Chinese people we're a local company that can be trusted. Of course, that's not why we did the products, but it had a side effect, which we're very pleased to see. One last note is that these products were launched within 24 hours. It partly shows the power of the Google backend platform, that we can launch things very quickly. And it also shows the importance to respond instantaneously to natural disasters like this, and that our technologies really came in handy. So these are a bunch of research projects I won't go into. So with all this work, what happened? We started with a market share around 12%. This is all third-party data, so I'm just quoting from third-party. We can't share internal market share data. We worked very hard, we improved our products, and we're very pleased to see that over time our market share has in fact increased from 06, 07 till today. So we feel that our efforts are paying off, and that our approach of having a lot of patience, empowering the local team, and taking a long-term view really paid off. And lastly, if one person deserves the credit, it's our boss, Eric Schmidt, who really made it very clear and public that he intends to give the China team more autonomy, and it's through that autonomy that we've achieved our success to date. That's the end of my talk. Thank you very much.
This was a dense talk, shall we say,
Yes.
and enormously informative. And I do regret, because of the schedule, that we're not going to be able to have Q&A today unless somebody has such a one or two burning question that they can't leave the room without getting it out. If not, why, we will actually say thank you once again.
Thank you.
Enormously useful, informative, and we look forward, I hope, to more visits.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.